Hello, thanks for being in a new video. This time we have a full review of the Nothing Phone 2. Let's get started. This is the second generation of the quirky phone from Nothing, which is a relatively new company, but already has some good experience from its founders, so let's see what it can offer us here, refining much of what we had seen in the first generation. In fact, at first glance it seems very similar, but it does have important differences that I will tell you throughout this video. But to begin with, let me tell you about the price and availability in Mexico. You can buy it at its online store at a price of 15,999 pesos for the edition with 12 gigabytes of RAM and 256 gigabytes of storage. On the screen you saw the reference price in dollars to give you an idea if you are not from Mexico, but remember that the prices here are not the same as there. On the other hand, there is an edition with 512 gigabytes of storage, which goes up in price to 18,999. Again, you see the price converted to dollars. So, if you compare it to the previous generation, it went up in price, although they also doubled the storage in the base version. But the important thing here is that by going up in price, it gets to compete in a segment that we could already say has other pretty strong competitors, especially if you consider devices launched last year or 2 years ago. Maybe you could find something that could compete very well, but how about if we are going to describe it point by point so you can get to know it? On the front, we will find a very attractive design. In fact, the device, as part of the software, also has an important aesthetic component because in most cases it will handle a monochromatic color palette. It only adds some red accents, at least that to its main elements, but after you go installing applications it changes a little the clean aesthetics that we could consider it has. Although being an Android device, you always have the possibility of installing a specific launcher with separate icon packs. But well, that's independent of the system, but you can even use the system launcher with many compatible icon packs downloaded from Play Store. Anyway, later we will see what features it brings, talking specifically about the software and the Nothing OS layer. For now, let me turn on the clear mode so you can see the edges, which in this case come symmetrical. It feels like a very well-made design. While it does not have ultra-reduced frames, they are small enough to have a good use of the front. Although it is true that in the market you will find devices with even smaller frames, but not with symmetrical frames, at least it is not so common. Here on the front we have Gorilla Glass 5 protection, which is not bad, although I would like to find Gorilla Glass Victus, at least in its first version. On the right side we find the power button in an aluminum frame 100% recycled. In fact, Nothing highlights very much its sustainability measures because several of the components that this device has are made with recycled material, and the packaging also comes with very little plastic, if not 0%. On the top we only have the microphone and some plastic bands to help the connectivity of the antennas. On the left side we will have placed the volume buttons. And since we have this side perspective, we can tell you that the thickness is 8.55 millimeters. Finally, on the bottom we have the main speaker, a USB-C port, another microphone, and the tray where we can place 2 nano SIM cards. So it has no expandable storage. The back cover will also be made of glass and also has Gorilla Glass 5 protection. In this case I have the dark edition, but there is also an edition in a light shade. But it is clear that in this dark edition, the glyph interface will be much more noticeable by having more contrast with the dark background. This glyph interface is one of the main features of Nothing. Remember that in this generation it now integrates 33 individual zones to be synchronized with a large number of ringtones that it has for you to set depending on the one you like the most. Later on we will even see another function so that you can somehow create your own animations. That's why I say that this is one of the main features and its strongest points, because in reality no other device today is going to offer you this type of features more than the first generation of the Nothing phone. However, although it looks very similar to the last generation, the feel in the hand is very different, as this generation has a glass with a slight curve on the edges that makes the grip much more comfortable. Remember that Nothing integrates transparencies in this rear area, so I think for the more tech-savvy, this touch of transparencies is very nice. What is not nice for me is that it has no water resistance to be submerged. It simply has IP certification of 54, which guarantees that it can withstand splashes. So if you're using it in the light rain, it's going to hold up without any problem, but if you happen to drop it in the water, it's not as likely to survive. And in a device of this price point, I think we could demand that. The screen is 6.7 inches and offers excellent quality. It's an OLED panel that also has LTPO technology, which I'll tell you about in a moment. But for now, let me continue to tell you about the viewing experience because it offers us very intense colors and also very high contrasts. The resolution is full HD+, so it gives us a very good level of detail on very small objects. It has a maximum peak brightness of 1600 nits, which will be reached only when you're watching HDR content, which is what I'm playing right now. It also gives us a 10-bit depth in terms of the amount of colors that it can show us, so definitely we're looking at a very good display, which also has good viewing angles so that even when you're viewing the content from the side, you're still getting a very good experience. So the device will give you a very good display even outdoors, and with respect to the minimum brightness, I think it's okay. Although I do think there are devices that are capable of lowering it even further. It offers you 2 color modes depending on whether you want more intense colors or a little less saturated. And remember that we have dark theme, nightlight, but something very important is that the screen is able to lower its refresh rate down to 1 Hz for the moments when you're watching static content, so it doesn't consume as much battery. If you have content with motion, it's going to go up to 120 Hz to show you very smooth transitions. Really, the experience feels very good in terms of the fluidity of the system because it also has very good optimization. So overall, the screen really gives us a very good experience. Now you're listening to audio captured with the microphones on this device. We have one on the right, one on the left, so yes, you can record stereo sound, but we also have another one in the camera area, so you can have slightly directional audio as well. So it seems to me that it performs well within what one would expect in a device of this price point, and with respect to the speakers, it also delivers because it also gives us stereo sound. We have the main speaker on the bottom and the secondary speaker is in the earpiece area for calls. The sound is good in terms of clarity and volume. The bass presence is good on the bottom speaker, but the secondary speaker is not so good in that aspect. So we don't have a symmetrical sound, but the truth is that it sounds good. Let's listen to a small test, but remember that it's not the same to listen to it live. However, through software, it does not have any equalizer that allows us to customize our listening experience a little more. But the good thing is that when you connect headphones, we will find an enhanced audio option, which will allow us to have high-resolution audio with headphones connected. But if you are not one of those who like to have wired headphones, it still offers advanced codecs such as aptX adaptive and LHDC. So that if you have headphones with support for this advanced codec, you can enjoy high-resolution sound even with wireless headphones. So it seems to me that in the sound section can get to have highlights fulfilling as a good device in its price range. The front camera is 32 megapixels with f-aperture 2.45. It offers us 2 wide modes, although not with that much difference. And as you'll notice, the capture speed, if you're not using the flash, is going to be considerably good for the first few shots. But if you want to take a lot of pictures, it can suddenly get a bit slow as it's processing the pictures you've taken previously. If we hold down the shutter, we can start recording a short video. And if we want to continue recording, we can swipe to the right. Although in the settings, we can change its behavior to give priority to a burst. Although, curiously, in the front camera does not work the burst. What it will offer us is the option to tap anywhere on the screen to take the picture. In case the shutter is too uncomfortable for you, since this device does not have the intelligent capture showing the palm. What it does have is a beauty mode that simply allows us to switch between natural retouching and intense retouching. But it does not allow parameter by parameter manipulation of every aspect of the face. It also has some filters that we can preview in real time. And that basically is all the software that accompanies this front camera. The selfies really are very reminiscent of the color rendition that the iPhone has. So you would imagine they come out very natural, very accurate, good contrast, focus is fixed. But when you're up close, so you come out in focus, and also when you're far away. So it seems to me that it handles this section well. We have a slight blur for everything in the background. Indoors, the picture maintains a good level of detail. Not much noise appears, even in areas that are a bit darker, and the colors are maintained with a good rendition. In backlight, it still doesn't look with an optimized preview, which could be improved because at first glance it looks like the photo is going to come out bad. But after you take it and have it processed, you'll notice that it comes out very well. The sky doesn't appear completely white, the brighter areas come out well balanced, and the darker areas also come out with good color. And I insist that this color rendition reminds me a lot of the results that the iPhone gives. At night, with some direct light source, we are going to have a very good result. Again, you'll notice that there's a good level of detail. And even in the darker areas, we don't have considerable noise. Just a little bit of graininess, but normal. Even in the darker areas where we have indirect light, we're going to have an excellent result. Very clean, no noise, no color distortion too much, and good level of detail. The device can even turn on its screen to simulate flash, and thus give you a little more illumination for the face. Even in backlit scenes at night, which is too difficult to see, the result comes out very nice, although not so much detail in the darker area, but that's normal. The truth is that it was a very difficult photograph and it was solved very well. The device does have a portrait mode that is able to blur the background, but it can't keep objects in focus, so it's not as accurate or as natural a result. Fortunately, the edge detection does have good quality and feels good. Plus, the bokeh effect looks great in the background part. Similarly, at night we have a good result in this portrait mode, although it can suffer a little more to define the details, but it is understandable because there is much less light. The rear camera system consists of a 50 megapixel main camera with f1.88 aperture and a 50 megapixel ultra-wide camera with f2.2 aperture. Both cameras have autofocus, so you can use the ultra-wide camera for macro shots as well. So it's really nice that it doesn't have what I call marketing cameras that are just getting in the way. The shooting experience is fast. In fact, it's faster than what we were seeing on the front camera. And in this case, if we hold down the shutter, yes, we can have a burst of up to 20 pictures if we have the settings that way. If not, it will start recording a short video. In the main camera interface, we are also going to have access to some filters that we can preview in real time. If we tap on the screen, we will also be able to reduce the lighting. But if you want to move more parameters, it also has the expert mode. Here we can move the compensation, also the ISO from 50 to 3200, the shutter speed from 1/12,000 to 32 seconds exposure. We can also move the white balance, the focus. And remember that this device does allow us to capture photographs in RAW for more advanced development later. And something that I like about this device is that it also allows us to use the ultra-wide camera in this expert mode. And with respect to intelligent capture functions, note that it does offer us an intelligent document scanner mode that automatically detects when we are taking a photo of such an item so that it automatically makes the necessary cuts. In addition, it will also offer us QR code scanning, which is extremely fast from the main camera interface, so we don't have to open another app to do this kind of actions. The capture speed of this device seems very good to me if you manage to capture the exact moment with ease. Even the burst is also good. It starts at the exact moment, although it doesn't let us take as many pictures as we would like. The 50 megapixel mode is available to take pictures with the full resolution of the sensor and be able to do some special cropping, but I honestly don't feel that I'm taking advantage of all the information from that sensor. In fact, with the ultra-wide camera, it also allows us to take high-resolution photos, although again, I don't feel that level of detail really corresponds to 50 megapixels. Possibly that can be optimized with an update. Outdoors, we will have a good picture with good colors. And in general, we could say that the photo is fine, although for the price, I would honestly like to see an even more advanced result, since even at the edges, we do see a lens with some distortion that is not pleasant to notice. Indoors, the photos come out well, with colors a little more natural, let's say. They are not as intense colors as we could find in other mobile devices. However, it is appreciated that we have no presence of noise or anything like that. In scenes with light backlighting, you will notice that it fails to optimize the preview well, but after taking the picture, it seems that the result is advanced. We have the illuminated areas without getting completely burned out and the dark areas with good illumination. At night, the result also looks very good to me with the automatic mode. With the night mode, there is honestly not a single difference. So, I think the night mode could be improved to better define the areas that have higher illumination. The ultra-wide camera at night also performs surprisingly well. Even in the darkest conditions, the ultra-wide camera copes very well because there is virtually no noise present, so the quality really looks very good to me. And if you use the night mode, it will try to define the details a little bit better, but it doesn't really improve enough. The main camera in these very low light environments also performs very well, and with night mode it ups the illumination even more. And now we go back to a daytime condition to see how the ultra-wide camera performs. Here we have the result that, as you will notice, also gives us very good amplitude. The lighting is fine. Specifically in this picture you don't notice the distortions and chromatic aberrations that we have in the corners, but it is still noticeable on some of the sides. So it's not such a high quality lens, but the pictures are good. Also remember that you can take a panoramic picture, although only with the main camera, but the result seems good to me, although a little dark in the shadow areas. And this day was very difficult because the sky had a very strong illumination. So photography is difficult and complicated, and I think the device solves it well. Where it doesn't really excel is in the zoom. In this case, you're looking at the 2x photograph, and I think it still maintains a very good level of detail. This photograph is at 5x digital zoom, and I think that would be the maximum where it still maintains good quality. Since the latter is a 10x digital zoom, and I feel it already looks a bit forced, so possibly in this section, nothing could still improve. This camera does allow us to focus on close objects with ease, and if you apply a bit of digital zoom, you'll get an even nicer photo. Notice that the bokeh effect generated in the background is also very nice, so there's definitely no need for a macro camera or anything like that, and still, the ultra-wide camera is able to focus on close objects, but it doesn't blur the background that much. So I prefer to take pictures with the main camera, but if you want to get really close to the object, you can use this macro camera. Portrait shots also come out with good quality, keeping objects in focus. Although the detection is not perfect, but it seems to me that it is very close to being so. Also in people we have well-defined edges and a natural blur. So I did like the result. In fact, it also allows you to take portrait pictures by applying 2x digital zoom. And despite being digital zoom, the quality still looks good, the level of detail is correct, and the blur in fact feels even more realistic because the detection makes it more accurate. This device supports video recording in 4K at 60 frames per second. This with both the main camera and the ultra-wide camera, and that is something remarkable since there are other manufacturers that give greater priority to the main camera, and sometimes the ultra-wide camera records in low qualities. However, here it is appreciated to have the support of this high resolution in both lenses. When starting a recording, we are going to have this ring or slider to be able to manipulate the zoom in a nice way. We can also pause and resume the content, and we can take screenshots of this recording. However, it does not allow us to manipulate the flash, nor does it allow us to rotate to the front camera without the need to pause the video. In addition, the expert mode is exclusively for photos, so for the moment it does not offer us a manual recording mode. But something I don't really like about this camera interface is that we can't slide the menu. We have to go one by one to move from one mode to another, so that might be a little bit cumbersome. The good thing is that if it's too dark, the device has a night recording mode that we'll see in a moment, although it drops the resolution down to full HD. We recorded the videos in 4K at 30 frames per second, although it does manage to reach 60, but we will leave that test for much more expensive devices. The truth is that the video quality is very good. I like the colors, I like the contrast, and everything well defined, without aggressive jumps in the exposure, without abrupt changes in the white balance. So it's very good. Indoors it also records with very good quality, without too much noise present. In fact, there is virtually no noise at all. Although in this indoor recording I did feel that the white balance was a little less consistent. But still, I think the performance is very good. The level of detail as well, and I like the results. In backlit recording, note that without HDR mode, we have a result that in itself is already good, although it does burn some areas of the background to give priority to illuminate the face. However, it does not make too aggressive jumps in exposure. And remember that it does have an HDR mode compatible with recording, in which it is undoubtedly spectacular, as it manages to balance lights and shadows well, giving us a very nice and practically professional result at night in environments that still have artificial lighting. We will have a good result. A little bit of noise in the darkest areas and the most illuminated areas may burn, but that is something that we could ask more expensive equipment. In general, I think this one performs well in recording. And if we go to much darker areas, we will notice that it is going to suffer when we no longer have direct light, as there is much more noise present, little level of detail, and it does not really manage to collect much light. In fact, it drops down to 25 frames per second to try to bring in even more light. Fortunately, we can turn on the flash for illumination. But you can't do it while you're recording. You have to stop recording and start a new video. But well, at least it does hold it while you're using the ultra-wide camera as well, as the ultra-wide camera definitely gets to suffer too much. And in fact, the lighting I was showing you was of the entire glyph interface, so it's much more even lighting. Now notice how it looks with flash, generating much more aggressive shadows, and the result is definitely not as nice. So it's appreciated that it lets us use all the LEDs that they already have on the back to illuminate. And I forgot to mention that it has a special night recording mode that certainly manages to improve the light input, but you do need to activate it manually. It is curious that this mode does not activate automatically when it detects that there is low light, and it does improve color capture. The digital stabilization it has is very good, which is something very good when you're walking and in faint movements. When you're running, maybe it is no longer enough to stabilize well, especially in movements of a lot of action. However, remember that for that we have an additional stabilization mode, although the resolution drops to full HD, but definitely even when running, it is able to better regulate these aggressive movements of a lot of action. The zoom will go up to 10x, just like in photography, but curiously in video it seems to me to be of higher quality. Fortunately, with the stabilization it has, it's enough to get a good long-range shot, and it is capable of switching between the main camera and the ultra-wide camera, although it feels a bit jerky, but I think it's fine overall. The focus you'll also notice is good. Remember that the ultra-wide camera can switch its focus and also reacts well, and the main camera generates a much nicer blur for the background and reacts fast, even on fast movements. In movements that are a little bit smoother, it's also able to go around adjusting with good quality its focus, so I definitely think that video recording I like a lot on this device. It doesn't have a portrait recording mode, but what it does have is slow motion, which comes in different settings. Several settings are in full HD. We have the most basic one on the main camera, which I didn't record. Then we have the ultra-wide camera, which is already a much more spectacular slow motion, which is even appreciated that it can be with this considerably high resolution. We also have the ultra-wide camera. We also have full HD. So definitely the slow motion is one of the strongest points of this device, and it comes even from the ultra-wide camera, which is really a spectacular slow motion, because there is virtually no device with these capabilities. The level of detail is very good, and you get videos that you can already use for professional sections. And on the other hand, the fast camera, fortunately it does have stabilization, and it does look at a good bit rate per second. But the most basic is 15x, which is very fast for people. Although the good thing is that the fastest can go up to 960, which can help you record very impressive landscapes. I shot at just 120, and look how beautiful it looks. Even remember that you can record in 4K time-lapse, which is something that not everyone lets you do. Unfortunately, the front camera doesn't record in 4K, so we'll have to settle for full HD. Fortunately, the colors look very natural. Again, they're very reminiscent of the iPhone's color rendition, however. It doesn't have a good job of backlighting, so you'll constantly see burned out areas to give priority to focusing on your face. So in that section, I think it does not feel an experience according to its price. I think here it could improve a lot. Hopefully they can polish it through an update. Also, it has fixed focus. In interiors, there will be a little more noise in your recording, and again you will notice some areas a little burned. Fortunately, the colors hold up well, and even with motion, you still feel that the video quality is high enough. But there is a bit more noise presence that I don't really like. Here at the front we do have fast motion, but again 15x is the lowest setting and I think it's too fast. We don't have front slow motion, nor do we have a dual recording mode. This device has Android 13, so it comes up to date from the factory, and that's a very positive thing. It also gives us 3 years of software updates, so it should make it all the way to Android 16. Although because of the dates we can't guarantee Android 16, but an approximate, it also gives you 4 years of security patch support, so I think it lives up to expectations for a device of this price point. And in addition to the custom home screen with this whole suite of special icons, it gives us some other extra features. For example, we have a whole suite of tools to take advantage of the glyph interface, which is all the LEDs that we have on the back cover. We can set an automatic brightness level or a specific one among the 3 levels that are available. We can also select some specific ringtone from the ones that already come synchronized with all this setting of different sounds and lights. Also for notifications, we can set a specific sound of those that already have synchronization. And you can set specifically for some applications the type of sound and notification that you want. It also has the flip to glyph feature, which means that when you flip the device face down, it will automatically go silent and only turn on the lights when they are calling you. It also has the glyph timer, which allows you to also in a very practical way turn the device face down so that the back cover automatically will show you this type of countdown. It also has the composer, although curiously it has to be installed from the Google Play Store. I do not know why it is not installed by default if it is integrated into the system options, but once you download it and install it, notice how it immediately brings some sounds that are already synchronized with all the lights on the back cover. So you can set here to record the effect, and you can select the effects that you want to have at the rhythm that you want to put on it. You can also enable those lights to function as the volume indicator. As you can see, there it is. And also when you talk to the Google Assistant, you can show those lights as a visual response. When you put it to charge, also these lights will give us an indicator of the charging status. And currently it's also compatible with Uber, so those lights will show you the progress of your trip. And so that they don't bother you at night, you can enable a time to go to sleep, and those lights will automatically turn off. It also offers always-on display, although we do not have a variety of covers. This is the only cover that it will be able to display, which is very much in line with Nothing's minimalist approach. Remember that it also brings an option to choose what kind of icons you want in case you don't like Nothing's minimalist ones, or in case you want the native Android ones, or even if you want to add some other downloaded from the Play Store. There are also some experimental features that look interesting. For example, it has direct connectivity with Tesla, so if you have one of these vehicles, you could have more information on your cell phone. It also includes support for displaying more information from Apple AirPods when you plug them in. You can also increase the response speed of the screen when playing games, although it will consume more battery. And finally, the glyph progress, which is what I was showing you a moment ago, that can connect to Uber. Although that's still in development, and surely over time more apps will be able to take advantage of this back interface. In the rest of the system stuff, the truth is that it's going to depend a lot on Google. For example, it doesn't have its own gallery, but relies on Google Photos, and the same goes for many other areas of the system. Fortunately, it will indeed have split screen to open 2 apps at the same time on the screen. These applications remain linked in the list of recent applications, and it also offers us the pop-up view, which will run the apps in a small floating window that we can resize. And as you yourself will be noticing, it does support YouTube. Although the truth is that it doesn't resize as easily as we'd like to say. Just remember that you can't run 2 applications in this pop-up format, only one at a time. And finally, it is worth noting the native Nothing widgets that have all this minimalist style that characterizes the brand. So you carry over the same design line of the entire exterior and all of Nothing's packaging into the system as well. The device integrates the fingerprint reader underneath the display, so it's a reader that won't be as fast as the external readers, but it will be of good quality. It does allow us to add up to 5 records, which is normal in the smartphone market, but it does not allow us to change the animation, which is something that other manufacturers do allow us to do, taking advantage of the fact that the reader is under the screen. It also offers facial recognition, but remember that it will only be in 2 dimensions, so it is not such a secure unlock. And in fact, I wouldn't recommend it too much. However, if you want to have a convenient unlock, you can go into more settings and enable Google Smart Lock. which will make the device stay unlocked depending on your location. So at home, it could always be unlocked, or while connected to a watch or headphones. The password manager for autocomplete is specifically Google's, so here you can store your passwords and more. However, one thing to note is that it lacks some features that other manufacturers do offer. For example, we don't have kids mode, nor do we have app lock, so that it asks for your fingerprint again when accessing certain apps. And the secure folder is divided into two. A secure folder is inside Google Files, but it does not allow us to use the fingerprint reader. Another secure folder is inside Google Photos, but it does not allow us to save files. So, here is an important aspect that could be improved in an update. And if you happen to lose the device, you depend on Google's own implementation, which is still not as robust as what we find in some other manufacturers. The battery on this device is 4,700 milliamps. It's not that big of a battery. In fact, it's a little smaller than what we see on average in the smartphone market. And the truth is, it does show. It's not a device that can boast long battery life. In my extreme drain test, I managed to get it down to 50% in 2 hours and 18 minutes. To give you a reference, usually devices with 5 milliamp batteries yield around 2.5 hours. So, yes, it's below that. And in fact, there are other devices that with smaller batteries still achieve a perfect optimization to extend this duration even further. So, it has neither a big battery nor a good optimization, therefore I don't feel it stands out much in this section. Fortunately, it does have wireless charging that goes up to 15 watts. And it also has reversible wireless charging that only goes up to 5 watts. So you can actually charge your headphones or a watch on the back of the device, and that's something that's very much appreciated. Although it's also something that in the price range we could start asking for. Charging via cable can reach up to 45 watts, but remember that the charger is not included in the box. You can buy it from the official Nothing store at 799 Mexican pesos. The reference price in dollars appears on the screen, but remember that the prices here are not the same as those there. However, you can also use Qualcomm Quick Charge chargers from version 2 to version 4. Or you can also use chargers that have the power delivery standard, both version 2 and version 3. So, at least it's appreciated that you don't necessarily have to buy the original charger, but you can also look for cheaper options, but you can be sure that they won't ruin the battery. The charging actually seemed very fast to me. In 15 minutes it recovered 42% of the battery. So although the battery doesn't last that long, with a little while of charging it is able to recover a good percentage. In 30 minutes it got up to 74% and the full charge finished in just over 50 minutes. In fact, nothing in its specifications promises a charge in 55 minutes, but in my case it finished even sooner. So let's say that in fast charging it is very good, but in autonomy not so much. The battery software also feels a bit simple as it offers a simple power-saving mode, but we will not have a more extreme mode that allows us to take advantage of the device in an emergency. It will also have the automatic optimization that all Android devices come with. And curiously, we have a slightly strange translation in this option, which is called battery status, which is actually a kind of intelligent charging, but only focused on the nights. So apparently it will be able to take care of itself when you leave it charging all night, but it doesn't have a charging lock option, and hopefully the translation will be improved. This device does have support for 5G networks, although it does not have a data restriction mode for foreground applications. It does have a data saver mode that prevents apps running in the background from downloading files. But there are other devices that allow data locking even in the foreground to save you from bad surprises and let you be the one to choose which apps can access your mobile data plan and which cannot. So that's another area where it could be improved with an update. The rest of the connections are very good because it has support for Wi-Fi 6 networks. It also has Bluetooth 5.3, so we have very good speed and very good stability. It also has NFC, so with Google Wallet you can access mobile payments by setting up your bank card if your bank is compatible. Fortunately, it does have the ability to project your screen wirelessly to both Chromecast and other TVs, because sometimes manufacturers using very light customization layers have restricted projection only to Chromecast. But in this case, I was able to project to an LG TV, for example, but unfortunately projection via cable with an HDMI adapter is not possible. What it does have is connectivity with Android Auto, both wireless and wired. In sensors, it does come very complete because it does offer us accelerometer, geomagnetic field orientation, gyroscope, light sensor, a physical proximity sensor that works without any problem. And we also have gravity sensor, linear acceleration, and rotation vector. The Nothing ecosystem is not very complete. It only has headphones that can be easily connected because they come with Google Fast Pair. However, the ecosystem is very focused on Google. So any other pair of headphones that have Google Fast Pair will connect in the same way. It doesn't have any special interaction. You also don't have any tablet, computer, or even watch that allows you much more full interaction. So the ecosystem does feel a bit empty or developing. Although Nothing has already said it is not very interested in making watches. But they will probably end up releasing some such accessory soon. For now, it's entirely up to Google. So if you buy a watch with Wear OS, you will probably have a good interaction. Also remember that you can use Nearby Share to send and receive files wirelessly. But everything depends on Google, even cloud storage, because Nothing doesn't have its own cloud. And regarding the control of home devices of the Internet of Things, Nothing doesn't have nothing something specific either. And it depends on Google Home. In fact, it's funny that on the lock screen you have direct access to Google Home so that here you get all the controls. Light bulbs, air conditioners, and more things that you have linked to Google Home. But it would be nice if Nothing could develop its own services and systems so as not to depend so much on Google. Let's go to our app opening test. While I tell you that it has the first generation Snapdragon 8 Plus, which is a pretty good processor, although not the latest in power. Anyway, having a very lightweight system, I don't think it's going to struggle at all. In fact, you yourself are seeing that it is opening with good speed all these applications. Possibly some applications that download content from the internet may take a little longer. And besides, I'm already taking a while to open some apps myself. Plus, the gesture navigation can be a bit tricky in this regard. I'm going to stop it a little early. 2.5 seconds on average it took to open these apps, confirming to us that it does have very good speed, and also with 12 GB of RAM, it's really going to allow you to have many applications open without any of them restarting, since the operating system also has good management. But considering that it is a system that does not add too many functions and is not overloaded, it will definitely fly with these 12 GB of RAM. As you can see, there won't be any kind of problem when you're switching between all these applications. And the experience is always going to feel very, very smooth. There's not a single moment where I feel like it's lagging or anything like that. And even as you're swiping and scrolling through these apps, it's not going to feel like the phone is stumbling in these types of activities. Now we're going to export a video with a total duration of 1 minute, joining several clips in 4K recorded with this device. Let's export the video also in 4K, and let's see how long it takes. That's it. It took about 30 seconds, proving that it has good power. So yes, you could edit several high-resolution videos here. Finally, let's talk about games, and in this case it doesn't have any special suite that allows us to collect our games and configure some special tools. But when you open a game, you are able to enable a special game mode, which, as you will notice, will allow us to have a special panel, so we can customize this panel to add a button to take screenshots. We can also add a frames per second monitor and a button to enable Do Not Disturb mode. Some games will have the ability to be optimized, others will not. Unfortunately, you can stream directly to YouTube if you want and authorize it. So, it's appreciated that you at least have these additional features, especially the frame monitoring, which I think is a tool that many gamers enjoy. In Call of Duty, this device allowed us to run the game in very high quality, at a high rate by default. In fact, we can go up to an ultra rate only in multiplayer mode, but the quality goes down. Remember that fortunately, this device does have a lot of effects available due to the integrated processor. As long as you have the high quality enabled, because if you have the low quality, they do not appear available. For the test, we set it to high, at a maximum rate. With this setting, it gave us 60 frames per second on average with 100% stability. Its highest peak was 61, and its lowest was 58, with an outside temperature of 38.7 degrees Celsius. Definitely with these numbers we can assure that it does give us a very good gaming experience without high heating. At least in this game we can say with a lot of certainty that it will give you a very good gaming experience. In fact, in multiplayer mode it also gives a very good experience, reaching up to 90 frames per second on average, with 100% stability. Its highest peak was 91 and its lowest peak was 85 with a temperature of 38.9 degrees Celsius. It is definitely capable of optimizing all this content well to enjoy a very good fluidity, which in conjunction with the high refresh rate display gives you a very, very good gaming experience. In the Marvel game, the fast settings per se give it on high, but for the test we turned up the frame rate, turned up the quality, and disabled the warming control to take it to a harder test. With this setting, again, it gave us perfect numbers. 60 frames per second on average with 100% stability. The highest peak was 60, the lowest was 56, and the outside temperature was 39.7 degrees Celsius. Definitely maintaining even good cooling, so this device can be useful for this type of users who want video games with very high graphics quality without sacrificing refresh rate. For the SpongeBob game, we selected an epic resolution and epic quality as well. With 60 frames per second and smoothing enabled, with these settings it gave us 59 frames per second with 91% stability. The highest peak was 60 and the lowest was 38. And what we noticed here is that apparently the device is going to limit a little bit of the processor to avoid overheating, because in this case it didn't exceed 40 degrees Celsius. And that speaks to good temperature management. Definitely, if you're the picky type who wants 100% stability at all times, you probably won't achieve that in this device, but you will achieve an experience that doesn't feel like a lot of heating. Finally, in Genshin Impact, this device by default loads the graphics in medium quality. However, for this test, we turned this quality up to the highest, also enabling 60 frames per second and extreme motion blur. With these settings, it gave us 60 frames per second on average with 98% stability. The highest peak was 60 and the lowest 36, with an outside temperature of 37.3 degrees Celsius. It is very curious that this game performed even better than the SpongeBob game, so you realize also that sometimes we depend a lot on the optimization achieved by the developers. But since it has a Snapdragon processor, you can be sure that the vast majority of games will be well optimized for this device and you will have a very good performance. So if you are one of those people who like to play games but don't want a gaming phone because of the limitations that these types of phones can have, I think this Nottingham Phone 2 is a very good alternative. For the moment, we have reached the end of this video. If you liked it, you know you can tell us about it, and we'll see you next time.